Hi, my topic is how to use social media to develop empathy along with public interest in low-income immigrant mothers. So, as social workers, we are called to work for large-scale changes that can push for the ethical values we subscribe to. In order to do this, we have to be knowledgeable in the policymaking process. Through our 606 course, we've learned that the policy process begins with agenda setting. And in order for any issue to even make it to the legislative floor, it needs to garner attention. Essentially, we know that ideological currents and awareness are the first steps to get the needed legislation to impact change. So how do we do this? How can we educate and inspire people on a large enough scale to gain the attention of our legislators? Social media. In the US, there are 300 million users of social media, and 90% of adults have some sort of social media platform. However, political change via social media isn't always easy to achieve, and often the posting of politically charged ideology can just lead to disagreements. So, how can we stand out? How can we actually make a change? Rather than citing facts or posturing our political opinions, we can use social media to garner empathy for the populations that we want to serve. Empathy is the act of both understanding but also connecting and vicariously feeling what others may be experiencing by connecting with them in the situations that we can relate to. Research has shown that when people have contextual understanding and therefore empathy around a population, they're more likely to support government aid to that population and less likely to discriminate against them. By showcasing stories behind the marginalized populations, we can turn them from anonymous statistics to real people who deserve basic human rights. This is particularly beneficial for especially marginalized populations that may not have a safe way to voice their own journey. A great example of this is the undocumented immigrant population. Particularly the population of undocumented immigrant mothers creates a unique space to cultivate empathy. Why? Because the need to keep your children happy and safe is something we can all connect on regardless of how different we are racially, culturally, or socioeconomically. When choosing our stories, we want to find something anyone can connect with, and any mother, parent, or caregiver knows what it's like to love and care for your children and want to keep them healthy and safe. Think of the empathy that we can create when we turn a nameless illegal immigrant woman into a mother doing everything she can to help her family. We have the power to change the narrative from people illegally entering our country to people doing everything they can to help their family. That's something we can all relate to. And by telling her story, we can create a human connection. And that connection can be the inspiration to gain political action or even change the current ideology around immigrant mothers in general. Currently in the US, the topic of immigration is highly debated, with 47% of Americans across party lines viewing undocumented immigration as a very big problem. Trump-era rhetoric around undocumented immigrants was one of fear and xenophobia, with narratives being backed by President Trump with statements such as, "Undocumented immigrants were poisoning the blood of our country." The media has treated migrants as a human plague and dehumanized the immigrant population. But through our empathetic storytelling, we can rehumanize and give dignity to this population as is part of our social work values. But before I get into the practical how-tos, I'd like to give a brief overview of ethical storytelling. So in order to tell a story ethically, we need to work with the population so that we're not telling their story from our point of view. We also need to make sure that anyone we're working with has final say on the narrative and has given consent to have their story told. We also want to avoid telling the same story over and over again, especially if we are reinforcing stereotypes about that population. And finally, we want to try to find a balance between highlighting the adversities this group faces and showcasing them as helpless or weak. There is a term called poverty porn here that we really want to avoid. The struggles that these women face can be told while still maintaining their dignity. And alternatively, you can spark empathy by posting rhetorical questions about the audience to the audience by putting themselves in the shoes of the population you wish to serve. So now for the practical steps. Step one is find an organization in your community that works with immigrants, specifically immigrant mothers or immigrant families. By working with them, we can make sure that we're telling their story authentically. Step two, as you're drafting your video or your post, make sure you're reviewing your ethical storytelling guidelines. Remember, we want to keep the dignity of each human in mind. Step three, this is where we get very practical. If you're using audio, you can use trending audio as part with your video. Even if it's really low and in the background where no one can really hear it, the social media platform uses that algorithm and will push that video further for more views if your audio is trending. And you can also gain more views by using hashtags. So for our example, things like immigrant issues, immigrant policy, undocumented immigrants, undocumented immigrant mothers, etc. And what's really great about this is that those are hashtags that are being searched across party lines. So Even if someone had gone looking for ammunition against immigration, they will come across this post and it will hopefully give them a chance to see something from someone else's point of view. Step 4 is action. Link this post to action. This means linking it to a website to sign a petition or contact information for your local legislator or even organizations that they can donate to. The whole point of this is not to make people sad, it's to spur political action. We are living in an unprecedented time of virtual connection, and our ability to shed light on the real humans behind issues is groundbreaking. Creating a narrative is the first step to any policy, whether they support or go against our values as social workers. It's our responsibility to make sure that the tide is turning in the favor of human rights. With a couple taps on our screen, we can be the catalyst that spurs public interest and ultimately legislative change. Thank you.